My guest today, Richard Branciforte, 51-year publisher of Good Times Magazine. If you're on Long Island and you don't know Good Times Magazine, you've been hiding under a rock. I just saw the issue that was just printed and I said to myself, my God, you talk about steadfast perseverance. I have to get a hold of this publisher who I've seen out in clubs, who I've seen do wondrous things for people throughout the years. And here he is in person. Hi, Richard. Welcome to Long Island Talks.
Yeah, good to have you.
Good to be had. This is fantastic. So I think we have some weaving backgrounds in publishing and our interest in music and people and events. But I have to ask, how did you start publishing in 1969 when most people, I mean, I was 7 years old. What made you start to publish a magazine? It's just absolutely incredible.
Yeah, I mean, this is like one of my stock stories, and it's actually, I think, a pretty good one. I went to Queens College undergrad, was editor of one of the school papers there. My editor was Gary Ackerman, who became the United States Congressman. And then I always was interested in music, and I always was interested in publishing. And I always said that we need something on Long Island like the Village Voice. We don't have anything. So I was going to Columbia Graduate School of Business, getting my master's in marketing. And I was interviewing for jobs, and I was getting a lot of interviews, but I wasn't getting great interest. And I got a good bite from AT&T. And then one of the guys in my marketing class said, hey, listen, my brother is a publicist for Jimi Hendrix. Would you be interested in interviewing for a publicity job with him? So I said, wow, that'd be great. So I went down for the interview with Jimi Hendrix's public relations guy, Mike Goldstein. And he's going through the list of all the things. And he gave me the rules. Basically, it was going to be $95 a week. It was going to be a 3-month trial. And at the end of the 3 months, they would decide whether or not to keep me on. So I said to him, well, let me ask you a question, what would I be doing? Because I kind of expected I would be writing publicity releases, and I had the whole vision of me being a big record company kind of guy. And he says, well, no, actually, he says, Jimmy has a problem. So I said, oh. And he says, yeah, he may be a guitar god to some. This was 1968. But when he plays clubs all over the United States, he gets stiffed by the club owners. So your job would be to travel around the country with Jimmy, and you would be the guy who goes and collects the money from Jimi Hendrix. So I was 22 years old at the time. I just spent 2 years paying for an MBA from Columbia, and I had this really tremendous offer from AT&T for a big $210 a week. So I started weighing things. I said, $95, this, $210 for AT&T. But I didn't take the job with Jimi Hendrix mainly because I said, I don't want to go out and collect money from bar owners. Never suspecting that 51 years later, I would have spent my entire adult life in 7 different states where I started newspapers, including Long Island, collecting money from bar owners. And I still do it to this day. I'm the guy who goes out and collects the money from KJ Farrell's and Mulcahy's and 89 North and Murphy's and all. And I thought I was going to do Good Times for a year or two. I said, I want free tickets to Woodstock.
So Richard, you would have been like the Peter Grant of Led Zeppelin had you chosen that, which, I mean, he was really the 5th member of that band. He was responsible for the revenue in that band.
Yeah,
But you're a smart guy, right? You're a smart guy because God rest his soul, he didn't live that much longer either.
Well, I think I learned the hard way that I wasn't cut out to be the A&R expert or the guy that was going to be the superstar.
Right.
We went to this big party for Jim Croce. They were having a press party for him at the Plaza Hotel. And we were leaving the press party, and we were walking down Fifth Avenue, and a couple of maybe 20 yards ahead of us, Croce was walking by himself holding his guitar case, and 2 of the other writers that were with me turned around and said, well, what do you think? And I looked and I said, nah, singer-songwriters are a dime a dozen. He's never going anywhere. So I don't know, over the years that I would have been great at picking him out. I always had editors like Kurt Loder and Dave Frick who had the ears. They were the guys who picked the bands that were going to be the next big thing and were. So, but yeah, the business end would have been a lot of fun.
So this is where we have similarities. So it's 1969. I started publishing my magazine, very similar in that they were Long Island based. They were free. They were distributed freely. About my circulation was 30,000 for sale by owner real estate magazine. 1989. You're doing this 20 years earlier. How do you get the know-how to even go to a printing press and print a magazine? That's what's amazing to me. You're young. How How old are you at that point?
I'm 22.
Exactly.
But yeah, I mean, it was actually real easy for me in college. As I said, I was the editor of the school paper, so I was used to going
Okay.
with this. I was the editor of the Columbia Graduate School Business News. I started at a citywide paper called it was a metropolitan organization called Central House Plan, and I put out the paper for that. So I had always learned, and actually I got into Columbia Business School not because I had good grades. Actually, I had lousy grades. But it turns out that I got an interview to come up to Columbia and try out to get into Columbia Business School. And I got to see the editor of the school paper before the interview. And he says, I'm a good writer, but I know nothing about laying out and designing the paper. If you came to Columbia, you think you'd like to work here? And I said, I'd love to. So during the interview, one of the three people who was interviewing, he says, let me ask you a question. If you came to Columbia Business School, would you be interested in working on the school paper? And I said, absolutely. I already met Mike, the editor, and I told him I'd be interested. Found out later on that was the main reason I got into Columbia Business School, because they needed an editor.
They needed an editor, sure. All right, so you're in the school, and then when do you publish your first issue? How does that? Are you out of school when you publish your first issue?
I'm still actually, I'm out of school. I had the idea, and I was starting to think about it. And then in February 1969, we decide we're going to come out. I decide we're going to come out with the school paper. So with a bunch of guys that are basically working on the graduate business news with me, I had a photographer friend and stuff. I decided I'm going to do the paper. So I take the job at AT&T. I started in February, and I'm there for 2 months, and they send me down to interview Mark Rudd from Students for a Democratic Society, because, hey, you went to Columbia, Mark Rudd went to Columbia. There's no difference between a guy that's a radical leftist and a guy who went to Columbia Business School, right? So I was at AT&T, and I had a great, great job there. And I started Good Times, called Action World originally. It was originally called Action World, and then became Good Times. People thought we were a porno paper, so I had to change the name of it. So
why Good Times? Why Good Times?
Having a good time, going out and partying. It just seemed like a great name.
Exactly.
So I'm sitting at AT&T, and my secretary buzzes me, and she says, Mr. Branciforte, you've got a call on line 2 from a Mr. K. And I didn't know any Ks in AT&T. So I pick up the phone, and I hear this voice go, hey, Dick, it's Murray the K. How you grooving today? And I said, oh, Murray, how you doing? He immediately launches into this whole thing about he's got this guy, Tony Kosanek from Canada. He wants to know if that, love the rag, Dick. I picked it up, and really, can you do Tony Kosanek? Meanwhile, word has gotten out throughout the AT&T network, 195 Broadway, where I was based. This new guy is talking to Murray the K. So I got this huge crowd, mainly of young secretaries and office workers and stuff, saying, oh, is he talking to me or Surrey? What's he saying? So the interview and the talk ends. About 2 minutes later, my supervisor, Jim Kaler, two rows up, buzzes me and says, oh, could you come up here for a moment? So I go up to visit him. He says, you know, you're doing a very good job here at AT&T on 195 magazine, but it hasn't escaped management's attention that you've got your own publication. So you're going to have to decide whether you want to continue to work here or whether you're going to do your own magazine. And the last article I ever wrote for AT&T was, can a person under 30 find happiness in a large business corporation?
Oh my God.
And I left, and I started the Good Times Action World. And I did it mainly to get free tickets to concerts, and I wanted free tickets to Woodstock, and I have free record albums. I thought I'd do it for a year or two.
So you went to Woodstock?
Didn't make it to Woodstock, got sick.
Okay.
Got very sick. Couldn't make it up there. It was probably the best thing that ever happened, because I would have probably died in the fields if I had to go up there with no bathrooms.
But since then, you've interviewed how many musicians and businesses?
15,000.
That's incredible. I mean,
we've got like four or five. We call them like the Trinity, but there's actually one or two more. I mean, one of the things that made us was the famous interview with Dwayne Allman. The Eat a Peach album is actually named after the interview in Good Times magazine. We sent to write it down. Young 19-year-old girl from Hofstra University to interview Dwayne. She didn't come back for a couple of days with the story, and she came back and we ran it. And she had this quote. She asked him, how do you feel about the peace movement? And he said, every time I go back to Georgia, I eat a peach for peace. I thought that was a great quote, so I blew it up as an outtake. And a year or two later, whenever it was, we get a letter from Capricorn Records saying that the interview with Good Times was one of Dwayne's favorite interviews. Could we name the album Eat a Peach? And actually, Wikipedia wrote about it. because there are all kinds of rumors. People thought that he had been killed by a peach truck, and that's what his name. But the Wikipedia article says, and the article was actually caused by an interview in an obscure Long Island publication called Good Times Magazine. So that was like one of our major coups doing that. And then we interviewed Jerry Garcia from the Grateful Dead when nobody else could get to him. And of course, the thing that was the biggest thing I guess we did was the putting Bruce Springsteen on the cover of Good Times Magazine. We were the second publication in the United States to have a Bruce Springsteen interview.
Incredible. And so since that initial issue in 1969, published weekly always?
No, it started off as a monthly.
Okay.
Went to bi-weekly around 1972. Then for 1 year, 83 to 84, it became a weekly. That was horrible. Putting out a weekly is like
yes,
you're never off deadline.
Never.
And then we went back to a bi-weekly, and it's been bi-weekly since 1984 until the pandemic hit in March.
Right. And tell us about that. It was just too impossible.
Like with everybody. I mean, here we are. We're approaching our 50th anniversary, April 1st. I started the paper on April 1st, 1969. And I started it then because I thought that if it didn't work out, I could tell everybody I was just joking and, move on. So we started April 1st, 1969. So April 1st would have been the end of our 50th anniversary year. We were planning a huge, big 50th anniversary celebration, reprints of the major interviews we did over the years. And then March 16th, we closed down because of the pandemic. And like everybody else, we figured, well, it's, going to be a month or 2 months, 3 months,
right.
See where we are. And 7 months later, we were still closed.
But what's amazing is that you could have just said, you could really use it as an excuse to say this has been a great run. It's more than a great run. It's actually incredible. It's got to be some kind of record, by the way. Is it a record for the longest published paper, singly and individually owned? It has to be.
I don't know about that, but we are America's oldest regional entertainment paper.
No doubt.
When I used to go to the national conferences of the Association of Alternative News Weeklies, I made friends with all these guys that had big chains, Chicago Reader, all these publications all over America. And I looked at last year's attendee list, and out of them, there was only 2 guys from Austin that have the Austin Chronicle that runs South by Southwest who were at the latest one. So yeah, I guess we've outlasted everybody.
You've outlasted everyone,
even except maybe Dan's papers.
Yeah, but here's the thing:
they were sold for the 8th or 9th time. So I guess
they were sold for the 8th or 9th time. There's 60 years last year, but they were sold for no doubt about it. And so did you ever sell then bring it back? Because I mean, there are those stories.
I did other stupid things. I bought 2 papers in Ohio and Columbus and Cincinnati.
Yeah, I did that
Started
too.
a paper in South Florida, started a paper in Portland, Maine, started a paper in Savannah, Georgia, bought a paper in Wilmington, Delaware. In the late 70s, we were flying. We were putting out 80 to 96 page issues. I had 24 full-time people working for me here on the island.
Let's talk about that because that's my time. 78, 79, 80. I'm going to the Mad Hatter, Hammerheads.
Yep.
And my go-to is Good Times. And it's like the time. It is the time. And you're at a prime age at that time. You had to be like literally living a rock star life. Had to be. Because publishers always get into places. I know that for a fact. You get the free passes for just about anywhere. Was that the case with you?
Yeah, I don't know if I was living like royalty, but we were doing great. We had these 80 to 96 page issues.
Sure.
We had come off of the Springsteen cover and all these other things. And yeah, I have to admit that I can't really remember the last time I paid for tickets to any show anywhere. Now it's gotten worse lately because in the last couple of years, with everybody being a digital publisher, everybody's a star. Record companies don't have lists anymore. It used to be, you call up and say, and the key to getting tickets wasn't if you wanted tickets to see Bruce Springsteen or Bob Seger, it wasn't them you really got the tickets for. It was because the publicists knew when they had great news, Green Slate has reformed, can you do a story? They were going to call you up. And we would cover people that, Clive Davis once said, Good Times covers people that nobody else will touch with a 10-foot pole. And that was our hook. Our hook was to find guys that were starting out and hitting it big, like Heart. Anybody that was big, the Police, Culture Club, anybody that was big before they became big. And the second part of it was to support Long Island artists and Long Island
music.
Always. Belief has always been there's an incredible amount of tremendous talent here on Long Island. Nobody was writing about it. And back in the 70s, Newsday didn't cover local music or music in general. Most people didn't. So there was the nationals like Rolling Stone and there was no real daily coverage. So we were kind of the go-to place, and that's why the record companies would give us these amazing interviews.
Did you always write through this whole 50 year? Did you always have a column, or did you always want to write, or did you take a role of like the management aspect, or both?
Yeah, I always say that when I grow up, I want to be the editor of Good Times, not the publisher. Publisher
Right.
has to pay the bills and collect money. I love the writing part. I always did some writing, but my music technical knowledge is not as strong as most of the writers I hired. So when I hired these guys, I would hire a guy from the middle of, he'd be in Omaha, Nebraska, and he'd read an article and an editor and publish an editor and publisher says, come to New York and write for a local music publication. There was no jobs anywhere in America for this kind of person. So I have probably an alumni of 25 different, 30 different editors that have gone on to become, Kurt and the guys over there,
Mm-hmm.
they were the superstars. But there were so many guys that went on to work at the Variety, and they went on to work at multiple publications. Same thing with my sales staff. You became a sales manager at Good Times for a year or two, and then you moved on to Circus Magazine or a national magazine.
Right.
You became big in that. But I love the writing part. The writing part is the fun part, doing interviews, doing stories. I interviewed some guys, but they were like, they weren't big superstars. They were like Little River Band when they first came to Florida. We interviewed them, and Julio Iglesias and the Four Tops. Garth Brooks. Garth Brooks was phenomenal. He was absolutely phenomenal. We interviewed him his rookie year.
Let's talk about the part of the business that people that are watching this interview might not even be able to fathom, and that's the distribution. That you come off the press with some number of thousand of issues, and now nothing means anything unless those papers are distributed to locations where people pick them up. That's like a little bit of a foreign concept to people that have been sort of professionally around since 2008, because everything went electronic. And there are people that never pick up magazines, although there's an argument for always wanting to have something in paper, and we could talk about that. But talk to me about distribution. What were your key points? Were your advertisers really your key distribution points? What made sense for you? For your advertisers to get calls? That's really what it was about, right?
I guess if you had to pick the one thing after the editorial product that made Good Times, it was the unique method of distribution that I kind of invented in 1969. 1969, the 60s were a strange year. You had the daily papers and things sold on newsstands. And then you had papers like the Village Voice sold on newsstands. And then the underground papers, they would be hawked by hawkers in the streets of New York City. Guys would literally stand on the street and they'd have, Subterranean Rat and all these other publications that were the underground papers. So I came up with the idea, and this must have been where the Columbia Business School helped me out. I wanted to reach a specific market, just not people who picked up free papers. I wanted to target at the people who picked up free papers and did things. They went out, they bought something, they went to a concert. So I came up with the idea of in-store free distribution. So when the paper started, I picked up about 200 locations in Brooklyn, Queens, Nassau, and Suffolk. For the first 5 years, I hand-delivered the papers myself in my Camaro. And I used to drive all over Long Island. I was in Dyker Heights, and then I would go into Sam Ash and Midwood, and then I would come out and do Queens, and then I would go out to Patchogue and the Hamptons delivering papers. And we carefully picked the places we were putting. So it wasn't just we were throwing papers out there. We put them in places that they were going to get picked up. And part of the hook with Good Times was, hey, if we put Good Times in your store, it will bring traffic in every 2 weeks who will come in just to pick up the paper. And Mike Kono, who owned the Music Warehouse, once said he didn't know how many people he got from the ads in Good Times, but when the paper came out, it was like a religious experience. People would be lined up at his front door before he opened to get the new issue because they all wanted to read the personals and the classifieds.
And the calendar. The calendar was really important. I remember the calendar being really, really important.
When we closed down Good Times in March, we had 450 listings every 2 weeks in the calendar. And it's amazing because people say, oh, there's no live music on Long Island. 450 listings, maybe a third of what was really going on. And we still do. We call over 100 clubs every 2 weeks to give them a free listing. And if you think it's easy giving people free listings, you're wrong, because you get the barmaids and bartenders who hang up the second they hear your name.
Cancellation.
Who says, don't want it, before you even tell them what you're calling about. And then you get the guys who are great and say, oh, thanks a lot for calling you. Let me give you listings. The idea being, of course, we hope that if they take the free listings, maybe they'll take out a paid ad some point down the road. But That's the thing.
Really, really cool. That's invaluable.
And
I remember that.
450 locations, as you know, you can appreciate it. They're
I
hand
did it.
delivered.
Yep.
I said in the editorial that just came out in today's Good Times, 2 of my 3 drivers have been with me delivering for a total of 40 years.
Unbelievable.
And one of them's older brother delivered for me before he did. I had a guy that bought I think it was a Rolls Royce. He bought a Rolls Royce. And I said, how the hell could you buy a Rolls Royce? He says, well, I had a regular job, but the 7 years I worked for you, I took every paycheck that you ever gave me, I put it in a bank account, and I used that to go towards buying the car. And he used to deliver the Good Times in his white Silver Cloud Rolls Royce. And his area, of course, that he delivered to was the Hamptons.
These incredible stories.
Then in the truck pulling up and the guy coming out of the pickup.
Yeah. Oh my God. So the issue that you just printed, you came back with what in mind, especially during a time where live music is, let's face it, all but, almost gone at this given point. What was your aim? Just to stay alive, correct?
Well, what happened was we hadn't come out, and actually for the first time in 51, we had never missed printing an issue of Good Times in 51 years, except for during Hurricane Sandy for one issue. And that was
a physical. What was the reason for that?
Everything. The printing plant had no electricity. There was nobody you could sell ads to or pick up copy. So we missed that one issue. So we came out with 1,294 consecutive issues through March, and I never missed an issue. And if you add on the papers in the other states, and I had Antiques and Collectibles magazine for 24 years. That was a Long Island-based paper. It was very easy to say, "Wow, this is kind of good," but I just can't sit at home. I went through books that I had never thought I would read and all. And then finally I got a call in August from my landlord, because we have an actual office. I'm a big believer in having a real office with people in it. And my landlord called me up and he said, look, I got somebody that wants your office space, and you got to let me know what you're going to do. And I thought about it, and I had a lot of bills that had to be paid. We had money that was owed when we closed down. We could collect money from nobody that had run into the last 2 issues because they were all closed.
Sure.
And I said to him, I'm going to come back out, and I'm going to come out once a month to start off with. And I'm doing it just to keep my place out there so people will remember there's a Good Times. I didn't expect the kind of support that we would get. We've changed our base. I'm looking forward to the day when the Paramount is open again and West Hampton Beach Performing Arts, because they were my bread and butter. But I'm getting ads from real estate firms. I'm getting ads from a lawyer. I'm getting ads from an eye doctor. I'm getting ads from clubs. I got some clubs like KJ Farrell's Warehouse, my father's place, advertising. And that has worked out very, very well. And I decided I'm going to come out monthly for a couple of months. Hopefully we can switch back to bi-weekly in February. Great. Awesome. And we just came out with our second issue today.
Excellent. And then I see that you're electronically available on Issuu, ISSUU. I love that, right? It just takes your actual paper and you can read it as if it's electronic. That is so cool.
For years, first of all, I don't believe in websites. Got to tell you that.
No, I realize that.
I agree with Ian
from
Rolling Stone. Somebody once asked him, how come you have such a lousy website? And he says, because if I had a great website, it would cannibalize my print product and people wouldn't subscribe to it. Same thing. If you could sit back and read the articles in Good Times and you didn't have to make a trip to Murphy's Music or Looney Tunes or any of those places, it defeats the purpose of us having the print edition out. I don't believe the digital works in terms of publishers unless you're the Wall Street Journal or the New York Times, because those people will pay for. They're not going to pay to get a Good Times. There's too many sites out there that you can compete with. But Issuu, and people couldn't see ads, and that was one of the main reasons when you put it up on your website, they couldn't see the ads. When Issuu came out,
it is what it is.
LongIsland.com, you can see the entire paper. So now, if you're sitting at home, I still would prefer you going into the store, because when you're in Murphy's Music and you're picking up a paper, you look up, and say, oh, that ukulele up there, that looks great. Let me take a look at it. So that was another thing. When we drew people to these locations, they purchased things, which is why people wanted Good Times in their store. But it's a digital world, so we offered people the opportunity for free to read it online. And it's complemented, because now what I can do is I can say to somebody, hey, you take a print ad and you'll get a free ad in the digital edition. And I really believe that print is coming back big. I've had people that I would never have expected, like the guy who does the repairs on our office printers. He's a young guy, about 40 years old. And he sits down, he says to me, oh, I read your paper because I love the print paper. I love to feel the paper in my hand. And I've had so many people tell me that. And I said, I like to sit in my easy chair and I like to just go through the paper. Plus, Good Times is designed to be held on to. It's not like a weekly or a community newspaper. You throw it out when you.
I completely agree. Well, listen, I'll tell you my story, and this is why we're talking right now. Only 2 days ago, and I emailed you, I went to a bagel store, right? Long Island bagel store. And I did not look at my phone. Didn't want to look at my phone because phone leads you to social media. Who needs that crap? And I read every single page of issue, and I took notice. 1295, and I go, when I talk to Rich, I'm going to ask him, is that literally your 1295th issue?
It is.
So I took note of that. I looked at it. I said, wow, I said, I have to talk to you because I lived this life, but 18 years, 51 years. Again, you're to be commended. It's just unbelievable. There's got to be some kind of Smithsonian for you. It's really great. I look forward to things getting back to normal for all of us, but I could see 2021. Hopefully it will be. And, getting the live music back out. And I saw you out there at 89 North last. We saw each other. I think it was a Swift Kick reunion. And it just felt great. It was like, 1980, 81 again.
That was supposed to be like a 50th anniversary party.
Right.
Times. And that was a great, when I went there, and that was the other thing, all these people kept coming up to me all night long, and with people I didn't know, saying thanks or congratulations or we love the paper. You don't get that kind of feedback from an email or from a text. When somebody is talking, and I get into these conversations, I love it when people call. And I'm seeing 3 people this week who have just called and said, oh, I have tapes from 1972 that I'd like you to hear. I took them at the Calderon Theater. I love that kind of stuff. We answer the phones ourselves. We've never had it that there was a automated system except after hours. And I just love answering the phone. It's like I used to love getting mail. There was nothing I loved more than going to the post office box and opening it, and all the records would pour out. Awesome. It would be like Christmas every day when you open your mailbox. Oh, and then when I had the antiques paper, I used to get these most amazing art books. And the same thing. I've got 20,000 LPs. I've got 10,000 CDs, probably. I've been going through them all summer. That was one of the things I did, sorting this stuff out and putting. I've got 20,000 rock photos or 20,000 music photos, and I'm working now. I've got
really so people that were reporters that went out, and you probably got 100 photos. You only printed 10, and you got all those other photos.
Well, I have unbelievable pictures that my own photographers took, but what I have is I have these exclusive press photos. So I got one, Dwayne Allman shaking hands with Elton John backstage at the Fillmore. It came from their publicist, so it would have only gone out to the media. And I have about 5,000 to 7,000 movie press kits, and I've been sorting them out just recently. I've got Rambo, I've got the Star Wars. I can make more money closing down Good Times than just
go to eBay.
Because some of this stuff, even copies of Good Times. Somebody emailed me today. He wants all the issues from 83, 84, 85. God knows why. So he's probably going to put them on eBay. And he says, how much are they? And I said, well, the problem is, I just threw out tens of thousands of papers during the summer. I had to empty my warehouse out.
I had to do it because you paid for it.
And I have 3 copies of each still put away. I have almost every issue of the 1295, but I'm missing, out of 1,295 issues, I'm missing 7 issues.
Now you got to get them back.
Oh, I got to buy them.
Yeah, now you got to buy them. That is wonderful. Oh my God. So right now, as today sits here in 2020, you're just still distributing to all 4 counties, or is it Long Island based now?
No, it's Long Island based pretty much. I tighten up. We do some Queens, but Nassau and Suffolk makes a lot of sense. We're putting them in places. I'm putting them in a lot more restaurants because as we've expanded the paper, we added a book section, we added a art galleries and museum section where we didn't used to have a live calendar. Until things come back, we've got a live stream and virtual. So we'll add your show to our calendar listing. So people are looking for stuff like this. And I didn't even realize the last issue, I had a whole bunch of people take ads, but I didn't know Rob & Eve had a radio show, or that Mary Lamont had a show, or that, Ben Metzger had Music Noir TV show. And this stuff is like fascinating. You always see these guys on Channel 19 or 20, whatever it is. And I want to see their shows, but you never know when they're on.
Yeah, you're right.
And there's no ID. You don't know who's playing half the time. I mean, you see somebody up there that's really good and you say, gee, I wonder where this is from. Whereas like with your show, it's great because you can go into archives. It's on, you have different places that you can see it. So this is all going on out there. And some of the biggest businesses, Norman Wassom's Friend Entertainment. I just went to a show, Robin Williams, last Saturday night at the Elite Studios. It was phenomenal. First of all, the guy looks exactly like Robin Williams.
Yeah, I saw that.
He had every mannerism down. He had the exact tempo. He was fantastic. There was only 20 people in the audience. They were streaming it live. It was, a pay-per-view.
Mhm.
And Epi's doing that at my father's place. So everybody's jumping on the live stream bandwagon, which is great. But I think when everything reopens, it's going to explode. And we want to be
Explode.
the ones that people say, oh, I've been reading Good Times to find out what's been happening when everybody was closed. Now I've got to be in Good Times.
Yep, I agree with you. Give us a sneak peek of issue 1296. What are we going to see?
I was going to bring the paper in. I forgot to bring it in, but you're going to see some interesting stuff. The cover. Okay, first of all, it's AC/DC. AC/DC's the big cover, big part of it. And they've got a new album out. And then the little teaser boxes.
Some things have a change.
Yep. I've changed those around to be a little bit more interesting. Instead of having some obscure stuff on the bottom, for instance, Bugs Bunny. Bugs Bunny's 80th birthday. So we did a happy birthday Bugs article in the paper. So we have the Hot Rod Hair, which was the first comic book I ever got as a kid. That's part of the cover. Then we did a story on a place called Seacliff Bagel Cafe, just a local neighborhood place. But the guy is a Culinary Institute chef who bought this garage 14 years ago, turned it into this, not just a bagel store, it's a cafe. Went there for lunch today. It was phenomenal. The food is great. Want to turn people on to that. And then we have Paul McCartney, because there's a character you may or may not have heard of called Rupert the Bear. Mm-hmm. And Rupert the Bear is the British equivalent of our teddy bear, except Rupert was 100 years old this year. Paul McCartney apparently in 1983 wrote the music for the Rupert the Bear movie. And now he's come out with a whole bunch of music to celebrate Rupert's anniversary. Inside, excellent. A lot more dining, a lot more deals. We're the only paper in the world that has a bowling column. We've got a books column. We've got a classic rock column. We've got a sports beat. Lloyd Carroll and Jimmy Lilumi have been with me a total of 80 years as writers. Wow. 40 years each, writing a column. One writes sports beat and the other writes rhythm tracking. And again, just things to do, places to go. We want people to hold on to the paper for the entire month, because if you hold on to the paper and you keep looking through it, you keep seeing people's ads. So maybe you didn't need to go to In Focus Eyewear this week, but maybe next week when you're looking for the paper to see who's streaming, look down and say, oh yeah, let me give this guy a call. So it's exciting. It's almost like starting the paper from the beginning again. And we're very, very, very small now because, the staff basically left when we closed down. So now we're doing it, a little piecemeal.
Yeah, just to stay alive. Did you want to talk about, you mentioned in the paper, your writing, that you had a little lawsuit, a little problem. Is that something you want to talk about?
Yeah, I got to be careful what I say.
That's what I thought.
But we were totally shocked.
Give me an idea of what it was about.
Yeah, we ran a story in December. Like always, people come to us all the time and say, listen, we got a charity event. We do a story. We have no money for advertising. And we always try and help any charities out. So there was this organization that was doing a benefit at one of the local clubs around Christmas time.
Right.
And we ran a half-page story, and we ran 3 pictures with it. And they're of local Long Island acts, and we got permission from one of them to use a picture on their Facebook page. So we ran the article, and a week later we get an email from a very irate photographer. Said, you guys are thieves, you're lowlives, you stole my picture. I'm the photographer, and blah, blah, blah. And we answered him right away and said, first of all, we had no way of knowing it was your picture. Your name wasn't on it. There was no copyright. We're real sorry. We got permission from the artist. And, we can run a little box. 1 week later, we got a $150,000 lawsuit for copyright infringement. And the person's lawyer is known as the copyright troll. Mm-hmm. He specializes in suing media, regardless of whether it's correct or not, basically to extort money. Sure. That instead of settling, the cost of having a copyright lawyer is so huge that most people try and opt out with a settlement. And it was horrible because we had just closed down.
At that timing, sure.
At the exact time we closed down and thought we weren't coming back out, and suddenly we're defending a $150,000 lawsuit. And it was frivolous. This guy, the copyright troll, has filed 2,500 lawsuits in 4 years.
That's
so it would be like if you mentioned on your show just now, I don't know, the name of a person, and that person sued you for defamation. Mm-hmm. So, so
you got through it. It's over, right?
We got through with it, but it was like an experience. It it keeps going on because we do have expenses and fees.
Sure,
and
sure.
that, but thankfully it's over with. But now we've got to be real worried anytime we run a picture of any artist. So if you called up and you said, "Hey, Rich, can you do a story on my show?" and you sent me over a picture,
Sure.
I would be afraid to run it because I wouldn't know who took the picture. And I'd have to have the permission from the person who took it. And the irony here was the person who had taken the picture of the artist didn't register it. It wasn't copyrighted. So they spent $900 to do a rush registration that took them 9 days so that they could sue us. So the goal wasn't here, somebody used your picture, you ran it.
Sure.
This is a picture that you would have paid 25. Newsday, if they were running this picture, would have paid them $75 for.
Sure.
Instead, they were looking for $150,000, and the cost eventually to us was like much higher, and we wound up eventually having to settle.
Unbelievable. I mean, if you're publishing, you're going to run against this stuff, but you said it correctly. Usually if there's a problem, there's a cease and desist letter that comes. Hey, sorry, we made a mistake. Won't do it again. That's a gentleman's kind of a thing to do. It sounds like I went beyond that. That's a shame. That's not cool. Shame on those people. I'll say that now, just from the little bit we've talked about. So, but you're past it. So positive. I hope that next year you do get to do some kind of amazing 51, 52 year anniversary party at some place where there are no COVID restrictions. Vaccine hopefully will be here, and we'll see those normal times again. It's kind of hard to believe I'm even saying that, because you deserve that and more. And your staff comes back, whether they're working for you or not now, just come back and we all get together and celebrate what I think is just extremely unique. And I give you all the credit in the world. And I just had to talk to you, Richard.
Well, we have something really big planned for next year. Right before the pandemic hit, we set up an organization called the Long Island Music Business Association.
Yes.
And I set that up to be the equivalent of a chamber of commerce for people who have businesses that are dealing in music. Could be a recording rehearsal studio, musical instrument store, concert promoter, whatever. We were overwhelmed with support. People that we never thought we would hear from said, I want to be part of this. So I came up with the idea. It was supposed to have happened November 7th and 8th this past weekend, 2 weekends ago, called Long Island Music Week, registered trademark. But Long Island Music Week, and what we were going to do is have 200 acts appearing at 150 locations. And the festival then was called Support Long Island Music Festival. And it's ironic because now it has even truer meaning. And then as part of that, we were going to have an open house at 20 to 25 recording and rehearsal studios where you could come down, meet the owners, meet the engineers, and have hands-on with owners to talk to them about what they do, brick and mortar. And that's what we want to support. We want to support brick and mortar commerce. And then we were going to do the same thing with musical instrument stores. We had 20 musical instrument stores that were going to have a super weekend sale, giveaways, in-store signings. So the idea there is still going on. I put together a board of directors that's absolutely unbelievable. It's the head of marketing at Mulcahy's, the owner of KJ Farrell's,
Excellent.
The owner of Long Island Drum Center, Murphy's Music, Looney Tunes, people that have been around for a real long time with local mom and pop businesses. No big names, no superstars, but people who have gone through 10, 15, 20 years of doing what they do.
Wow. I'm looking forward to that. Everybody's behind you, Richard. Keep going. We wish you all the success in the world. Thanks for talking to us here on Long Island Talks. It's been a pleasure. Looking forward to picking up issue 1296.
Being distributed while we talk, 250 to 300 locations.
Love it so much. Thank you again. We'll talk soon, and I'll see you very soon on the road.
Great. Thank you very much. This was fun. I always enjoy these.
You're welcome.